I can tell you, you know, because I was talking earlier about Cassandra Fairbanks. A bunch of conservatives are really angry. They're very pro-Israel, and I'm like, dude, this company and the work that I do is not predicated upon the history of Gaza and Israel.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is you have these people who, for some reason, have a large portion of their identity rooted in which side is correct and which side is wrong.
True.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll come out and they'll assert one side has, you know, it's funny because they're like, you know, it's historically Palestine, therefore, you know, Israel's the occupying force. And then the other people are like, it was Judea and it was like Jerusalem, the Holy Land. Are you crazy? And I'm just like, I can tell you, it's not America. And
yeah,
I'm not from there.
That's
so
my thing.
I don't know,
like,
man.
There's been violence and conflict over this region for a really long time, including in recent years prior to October 7th. I'm not saying that Israel shouldn't be able to defend itself. Of course it should. On the other hand, similarly to the conflict that's been ongoing between Russia and Ukraine for a long time, is this in the American people's best interest to wade into a war, which we have very little cultural understanding of, and at the same time make worse. Like Joe Biden's saying, yes, Gaza, I will give you money. Also Israel, I'll send some troops in. We don't know what side we're going to be on, and ultimately we're not going to make anyone happy. We're only going to ask.
I certainly hope we know what side we're going to be on. I certainly hope we're going to be on the side of our allies.
Well, but our allies are committing war crimes.
What war crimes are they committing?
Well, if you're seeing the reports of white phosphorus being and
so you're taking Hamas's word.
No.
Okay.
But I'm taking reports on the ground. I'm Jewish. And I just don't want anyone, I don't want atrocity being conducted against anybody. I don't want any more Israeli lives to be taken. I don't want any more Palestinian lives to be taken, especially innocent children that we're seeing. And so many times I'm saying this online and people are saying, oh, so you're pro-Hamas or, you know, you're pro-sympathizer for terrorists. No, not at all. But I don't want any innocents to die, and I'm seeing white phosphorus being rained down, and 1 in 20 buildings in Gaza are leveled, and you're seeing more bombs being dropped on Gaza than were dropped in the entire first year in the Afghanistan war. And so and those are war crimes, okay? Because when you have
what is a war crime though? What does that mean?
Collective punishment. Defined by the Geneva Convention is to punish an entire group of people, innocent people, for the crimes of, especially this, a terror group.
It's the government, though. Hamas was elected to lead the government.
But there hasn't been a fair election in a decade.
But I think we pulled this up too. The recent surveys show that 51% of people in Gaza support Hamas. And so, yeah, I'm not going to blame the civilians. There's a lot of really awful videos that are coming out, but I'll tell you exactly where I'm at. I don't know anything about the region for the most part. I mean, obviously I do know a bit about the region, but I have no vested interest in the outcome in the region. I am not here to be like the history of Israel, or Israel this, Israel that, or Palestine this, Palestine that. I can tell you that on October 7th, a horrifying terror attack occurred in which Hamas tore through the fences, went in and started massacring civilians. Israel's released some of this footage. We got a bunch of this footage. And then what I end up hearing from people is, yeah, well, I bet Israel knew. And I'm like, how did we shift from... We quite literally have video of civilians being gunned down in their car and people burning down homes and children being killed. And the response immediately is, yeah, but I bet Netanyahu knew about it because he was doing it to benefit himself. And it's like, no. We are so far from that conversation. The conversation is right now, Israel was attacked. Innocent civilians were killed. Max Blumenthal came on and said Hamas targeted the civilians because it's opportunistic for them. It's part of their doctrine to target civilians to use as bargaining chips against Israel. And then after that is the beginning and opening premise, I have people complaining about Israel. And I'm like, yeah, Israel's probably doing a lot of bad stuff. This is what happens when you declare war on someone. Hamas declared war on Israel. Israel is the powerhouse with the fourth most powerful army, so they say, with support from Western powers, and Hamas decided to declare war. Now, a lot of people then go, yeah, well, it's an open air prison and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you lost me already. I am not Israel. I am not Palestine. I am the United States of America. I am an individual here, and I can't tell you about the history of the region. I can tell you, if they did not tear down those fences, storm in and massacre 1,000+ civilians, there would not be bombings in Gaza.
That's right.
Does not mean Israel should be indiscriminately targeting anybody. But then the argument from the pro-Israel side is we are not just trying to target and we are not trying to take out civilians. And then I can tell you this, after all the dust settles, Hamas and the left have lied about almost everything. So when someone comes and says Israel's engaged in war crimes, I go, hospital. And they go, yeah, but no, hospital was fake. They lied. It didn't happen. And we were so busy tricked into arguing over who did it, we never stopped to ask ourselves, did it even happen? And the answer was, it did not.
Well, from the beginning of the conflict, I've been saying nothing but I want peace. I condemn Hamas. I even went as far as saying F Hamas on my Twitter. But I think things still have to be pointed out. Israel is a formalized government. Palestine is not. Nobody takes the Palestinian government serious. So when bombs are being dropped on residential buildings in Gaza, you have to point that out. And if you say that Hamas is using those to protect whatever they have there inside, well, Israel's very capable of going in with insurgent teams and getting out or killing whoever they need to. The West supplies them with a ton of money and a ton of training with our armed forces. And so I think they're perfectly capable of going in. I don't see a need for leveling an entire building. And the problem is, I don't think you'd see the reaction that you're talking about if you didn't have evangelical Christians on Twitter saying, glass Gaza, make it a parking lot. Like this incendiary rhetoric that just has no care for human regard, because it's more about humanity than anything. I could care less if it's Israeli or Palestinian. It's about humanity. And people are being killed at rates you've never seen before. 2014, 88 Israelis died and 2,329 Palestinians died. No one was calling, what's going on over there in the Middle East, we should get involved.
I don't think comparing the total number of dead answers the question of what, how, or why, and does not indicate justification or
I just don't like how the media covers it differently, because the first time you have an Israeli attack, then it's like, oh my gosh, the world's ending World War III, but Palestinians have been being killed for years and you're having no coverage of it. And that statistic I just gave you, that's one Israeli for every 27 Palestinians.
But that doesn't mean anything.
Well, it does to me, because for a decade, 20 times more Palestinians have been killed. So when you say, why are these people...
But hold on. Who are these Palestinians?
They're innocents, civilians.
So this is the issue I take with it. I am the United States. I am not Israel or Palestine. I know that Hamas just invaded, killed a whole bunch of civilians.
Right.
Israel has responded. Hamas lied about a hospital being leveled and 500 people dying. Yeah. Totally fabricated.
Hamas is wrong.
And so now the premise, any point you initiate, Israel's blown up buildings. Lie. Not interested. Prove it. I took Hamas at face value. Boy, was that a mistake. When they said it was an Israeli airstrike, we were actually arguing like, wow, could it have been an airstrike? I mean, we don't even know. I mean, oh man. And then it was a Hamas rocket likely misfired, and then the payload dropped into a parking lot, killing people.
Well, that's the thing.
Agence France said it was 10 to 50 people.
And maybe it was a parking lot. We have no idea.
But that's
look.
Those are the reports.
So then I hear, yeah, but what about white phosphorus, bro? I'm sorry, but the people marching through the street who are saying from the river to the sea, who lied about this hospital, get zero benefit of the doubt from me. And that means the only word I have is Israel's, and I don't even trust them.
Well,
so all I can say is, we don't want collateral damage. We don't want war. We don't want civilian deaths. We want peace. We want the conflict to stop. The argument then becomes, should Israel airstrike, or should they send in a ground strike force to start executing Hamas? AOC effectively called for that.
Yeah.
Saying we want precision
that should be
and intelligence. So Israel should invade Gaza.
If they're going to defend themselves, they should not be bombing where there's a ton of civilian casualties.
They told everyone to leave, and Hamas told everyone to stay.
But I saw reports of people who were saying, my mom is bedridden because she's sick and she can't get up. What are we supposed to do? Some people have no form of getting anywhere, and they're just supposed to see on Hebrew television that they're supposed to get up and go somewhere. I think that's unrealistic.
It's not just on television.
Well, where else is it?
I mean, they put stuff out. Like, there's been a lot more of that. They went to the UN. They told the UN, like, get people evacuated from this area. The UN spoke to, representatives in Gaza. They have diplomatic channels.
This
was like a week ago.
And the UN was like, it would be very difficult to move a million people at once. I mean, it's an incredibly difficult situation. I think Hamas lies. I think this is a lot of violence. But if we're going to return to the premise of, does America help? Because like we've talked about, if Joe Biden's going to give whatever millions of dollars to the Palestinians, but we know ultimately that'll probably end up in the hands of Hamas. But then we're also saying, Israel, we're your ally. We're not helping.
Did you hear what he said last week? What Biden said last week when he gave that speech? I think it was on Thursday. I think it was Thursday. And he said, you know, we're going to give a bunch of aid to Gaza. And if Hamas doesn't steal it, we'll give more.
We did that here. And
it's like, what are you even talking about? What do you mean? Like, obviously they're going to take it. They take all of it.
But also, like, he knows that and he's still trying to play both sides. This is something that we're seeing.
I find that more infuriating. I'm much happier to give money to our allies and not give money to our enemies.
I would rather give money to the Americans in America than to,
you know, we already did that. I don't want to do that either.
Both sides of a war that we are now
making
easier to escalate.
That's insane.
I don't like that American and British Western munitions are being used to kill innocent people. I think the human loss and the toll that is, in any world where morality and ethics exist, means if Israel's going to defend themselves, they send in insurgent teams, they kill who they need to kill, whoever caused whatever attacks took place. That's what they do. They don't risk it. They don't risk it with announcements saying leave Gaza, leave where are they supposed to go, to tent cities for them to bomb and glass Gaza?
Why won't any of their allies take in refugees from think Gaza?
Well, King Abdullah from Jordan said that he doesn't want to do it because he sees it as kind of enabling Israel to take over Palestine.
That's such a great reason.
That's a great way to say that. I thought we wanted open borders everywhere. I thought that was the answer. I thought open borders.
No, just here in America only.
Just to destroy our country.
Okay, so now you're an American
citizen. You don't understand. As I have now said several times, when your neighborhood is like being rioted, you just leave your front door unlocked and then go defend someone else's house. That doesn't make sense.
I'm just genuinely curious why people are so fervent, why there's so much fervor over Israel-Palestine.
I know. I couldn't tell you. As a Jew, I don't want to see my fellow Jew die, and I think it's sick. I thought after the Hamas attacks, all the carnage that was left, the pictures that you saw on Twitter, like I was telling you before the show, you're seeing nothing but graphic footage all around Twitter. The carnage that was left behind by Hamas is despicable, and the consequence for that should be they should be killed. But it, again, should be just them that are killed, not innocent kids.
I suppose the challenge is like Israel's choices after being attacked are airstrikes on strategic targets, which results in a lot of collateral damage and dead civilians, and that's horrifying, or invasion. I don't know. Pick one. Me, I'm kind of just like, I don't know. I'm not Israel, and I'm not in this war, and the United States is partially, I suppose, tangentially involved in this war, and I think we shouldn't be because it's an unsolvable issue. I just think if you've got
miss Trump on this.
I mean, sure. I mean, but if you've got 51% of Gaza saying they support Hamas, and even in the United States, these people are chanting from the river to the sea, peace is not an option. I mean, peace is the preferred outcome, but it's not an option when you have one side saying from the river to the sea.
Yeah, but the majority of those folks, at least I like to think, are not going to go out and actually plant a bomb. Like, I think that justifying any war on Gaza because those folks are so critical against Israel, that doesn't justify killing them.
That's not it. That's Hamas using schools and hospitals to store weapons and to launch rockets, and then attacking Israeli civilians because, as that Yale professor said, settlers aren't civilians. So to the people, to 51% of people in Gaza, let's just say 51% supporting Hamas, anyone, some of those people were tourists. Fair game, kill them all. That's what they're doing. That's horrifying. Right. You're not going to get peace in Israel with Israel and Palestine if that is the view of 1 million people in the Gaza Strip.
Right. Yeah. And
what is Israel's plan? Let me ask you, what do you think would happen if the barrier fencing around Gaza was completely removed and Israel just said anyone in Gaza can do whatever they want? They can freely travel.
Well, I mean, that kind of exists now. They're able to go back and forth for jobs.
No. I'm saying the barrier. What would happen if the barrier was completely removed? Security around the Gaza Strip was removed, and Israel said to all of the people, you can freely move about all of Israel. What would happen?
I'm sure there would probably be conflict going both ways.
Both ways?
Yes, both ways, because I've seen Hamas and Palestinians.
You think Israelis in like Tel Aviv will march into Gaza with guns, start killing civilians?
I think violence will be conducted either way. I think that I've seen IDF soldiers treating Palestinian kids very badly on the streets, and sometimes they brag about, doing brutal things to them. I think it would go both ways, regardless of the situation.
So if the fences were removed, Israelis would go into Gaza.
I'm not saying just Israelis. I said
no. I know both ways. That means the implied is Palestinian civilians will go into Israeli settlements and start killing people. But you also think Israeli civilians will go into Gaza and start killing people.
I didn't say that. I just think that the conflict would go both ways. I don't think it would be good for anyone.
But what does that mean both ways?
I think that terror or any act of violence would be carried out both ways by both parties involved.
But I don't know what that means. Like, you think the people in the Gaza Strip, would they leave the Gaza Strip? If the barrier is removed and security is removed and they say you can freely move about
I don't think a lot of them would.
They would just stay there.
I mean, I'm sure there would be some tension for sure, but I don't think a lot of them would leave the homes.
You think the people in Gaza would just stay there? So, so it's not an open air prison.
Well, if you're saying that Palestinians now can't go to Israel, they can. I mean, and I don't think a barrier makes much of a difference if you can get through to it to go to your job from 9 to 5.
So so it's not an open air prison, and the complaints of the Palestinians are just exaggerations?
Well, I think that the land conflict is a whole nother topic. I mean, what belongs to who, that's just a whole nother can of worms I don't want to get into. But I don't think a barrier there is what's stopping any specific thing. I think people are able to go free and easy regardless.
Right. So the issue, I suppose, is leftists are calling it an open air prison where people are trapped and stripped of resources.
Well, in a way they are, and that's another war crime you mentioned because...
So it's a war crime that they're trapped in there.
Well, it's a war crime what's happening now where electricity, water, food, and aid is being cut off.
But they can just leave.
But that's a war crime.
No. It's not if they can just leave, right?
That is an area where people live, innocent people live. And so when you cut off electricity...
Who's giving them the electricity?
Well, Israel.
So they're obligated to give free electricity to people of Gaza?
Well, when they oversee certain supply routes, they're able to cut off food.
No, but people can just leave Gaza, you said.
Right, they can, but they don't want to give up their land again. They don't want to go to a tent city in some desert and then have the land that they had in Gaza be taken over as well.
I'm not sure I'm following it. So Israel is providing electricity to Gaza. Under what obligation do the Israelis have to give a resource to the people of Gaza? And how is it a war crime if they decide to stop supplying a resource?
It's a war crime because those routes, those electricity routes, those trading routes where they get their food, they get their water, go through Israel. So when the Israeli government cuts it off, that's a war crime.
Why? How's it a war crime?
Because you're disallowing innocent civilians from having drinking water, from having electricity.
So you're saying that it's not Israel isn't producing the electricity. They're just going in between where Gaza would get it from normally.
I know a lot of the supply routes are not just coming from Israel. I don't think there's a lot of Israeli
Egypt?
aid. Yeah, I think they're coming from
Rafah crossing?
Right.
So Egypt is trying to get electricity to Gaza, but then Israel is stopping it?
I think Egypt is trying to get aid and food and water and resources and medical resources to people, and Israel stopping it. How the electricity grid there works, I have no idea, but I know Israeli technology capability does not stop it being able to shut down a power grid.
I'm not sure I follow criticism of Israel in this line of thinking. So if people can come and go as they please, but they don't want to live in a tent city, so they would choose to live somewhere with no electricity, it's a war crime?
Well, no, but you got to look at it like, let's make it out like it's here. If, I live in Georgia. If Alabama decided to, attack Georgia and come in here and say, well, you gotta leave or you're not going to have food or water or resources. I don't want my land to be taken over, so I'm going to fight against those people in order to prevent my land from being taken over in order to get resources once again. If your land's already been taken historically.
Yeah, but why have the Palestinians rejected a two-state solution going back into the 70s and even
times.
Previously?
Yeah.
Again, when it comes to the land conflict, I think that they don't really see Israel having any claim over the land.
Right. They don't want Israel to exist. Right.
That's not okay. However, that doesn't justify a war crime to cut off.
But what
resources.
are they? So what should Israel do when they have neighbors, not just in Gaza and the West Bank, not just the Palestinians that don't think they have a right to exist, but they had a longstanding conflict with Egypt. They've had longstanding enemies in Lebanon. They have, and they're the only nation in the entire region, right? Mm-hmm. And they have enemies surrounding them. So when you had Trump's administration come in with the Abraham Accords, creating the bilateral agreements, that was starting to be effective. We recently had Saudi Arabia and Israel almost normalizing relations.
Right.
You have Israel can't even play soccer in the Middle East League. They have to play in Europe because otherwise they would get killed right?
And,
by like
and
the
Hamas
fans.
engaged in the attack they did to stop the Abraham Accord negotiations.
And to stop Saudi Arabia and Israel from getting close, because the Abraham Accords essentially left the Palestinians out of it. And why were the Palestinians left out of it? Because they have refused to come to a negotiating table at any point with a consideration of a two-state solution. So we've had Bill Clinton propose a two-state solution. He had this idea that actually gave Palestinians a whole bunch of stuff that they wanted. And who was it then? It was Yasser Arafat. And Arafat was like, nah, we're not going to do that. You had Obama had a two-state solution. And so finally Trump just ignored them. And they don't like that either. And that's when they lashed out and killed 1,400 people, including a whole bunch of civilians, children. And so now you're saying that there should be a ceasefire because Israel shouldn't be fighting against the people who are actively seeking their extermination.
The problem is there are Jews and Israeli Jews who believe that Palestine shouldn't exist and that they should have more of a land claim. So to make this whole thing ideologically based, I think is the wrong route to go. People are killing each other. Innocent people are dying. So everyone should want a ceasefire. We can come to the table as countries diplomatically after. But like you said, the biggest issue right now is to focus on the civilians that are dying.
They won't come to the table.
Before we came up here, the crew downstairs was watching a show called Golden Balls.
That was great.
It was great.
What?
Golden Balls.
You missed it, Hannah Claire.
I was working.
Well, we were watching on the big screen. We were watching Golden Balls on the big screen.
Well,
Golden Balls is a British game show that fills me with righteous indignation and fury.
But is it race-based because it's the British?
So everybody gets some golden balls. And then in like the first round, they're like, you show two of them and they have dollar values. And the goal is to build up a big jackpot. And then two of them you don't see and you have to lie about what they're worth. You claim that, oh, if you pick me, I have 10,000 pounds and whatever. In the end, the way the game works, the reason why I bring it up, there are two balls in front of each person, two people left. And one of them is steal the prize money and one of them is split the prize money. If both players agree to split the prize money, they split the prize money. If one player splits the prize money, but the other steals it, the person who steals it gets it all. If both players try to steal it, they get nothing.
Right.
So you see two people look each other in the eyes and say, we're going to split the money. We're going to split it. I will take half the jackpot. That's fine with me. And they go, yes. And then the game show host says, choose your ball, steal the money or split the money. And then they shake hands and they're like, we're going to split it. Yep. And then they both open steal. They lied the whole time. It's particularly brutal when one person says, I'm going to split the money with you. And then it gets stolen from them. And they go, I knew it. And you know what you learn from that? Evil exists.
Right. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And then the people who choose to steal the money from the other person go, yes, yeah. And so here's what I see. I see these leftists marching through the street. They lie every time. Every time. The Hamas hospital thing really pissed me off.
Yeah.
And then they go, they rip through the fences, massacre civilians. Watch the videos.
Yeah.
And then they go, please help us. Please, they're shooting us. And I'm just like, y'all started a fight and you're losing. And now I'm supposed to be mad at the person who's winning. Yeah. If a guy breaks into my house with a baton and I've got a Remington 12 gauge, people are going to be like, don't leave him alone. You have a shotgun. Dude broke into my house with a weapon. Israel gets attacked and they go, but 75 years ago, nothing. I got no idea what you're talking about. Okay. How about we stop fighting right now? If the argument is civilians should stop dying, then Hamas is the problem. And if the argument is we should have peace between Palestine and Israel, well, the problem is that Hamas exists. And so long as there is someone who's going to steal the money from the other person and lie about it, there's not going to be a peace agreement. Any other argument is pointless. The people who are like, Israel's engaged in war crimes, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, there's a war going on and one side is lying about everything and started the fight and is actively trying to massacre civilians, arguing that every civilian is a colonizer and from the river to the sea, they're going to reclaim this land. I'm sorry, dude. Peace agreements sound like a psychotic proposal. There's a man standing before you at the front of your house saying, if you let me in your house, I will do unspeakable things to your children. And then people are like, just let him in. Just let him in, negotiate. You're kicking him outside. He's got no electricity outside. You've cut him off from warmth and heating and air conditioning. It's a war crime. And I'm like, he's going to come in here and he's going to kill everybody. No, you're committing a war crime by not giving him stuff. And I'm just like, dude. I can't do this.
What if, hear me out, we had the leaders of Hamas, Palestine, and Israel get together, go on golden balls, and see if this settles the conflict. Maybe there is a way to just get out of this using British entertainment
Peace isn't out of the question. When Trump was in office,
always get out of it using British entertainment television.
I really think it's an underrated geopolitical diplomatic resource.
You cannot argue for peace after Hamas massacres a bunch of civilians, starting the conflict, and still, right now, despite everything going on, keeps telling everyone they will kill Israelis, no matter what. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.